Hello, good day everyone. Today we are going to discuss two methods of depreciation. First is the declining balance method, and the second is the double declining balance method. So for the declining balance method, the method is sometimes called the constant percentage method or this Matheson formula. And it is assumed that the annual cost of depreciation is a fixed percentage of the salvage value at the beginning of the year. And moreover, the ratio of the depreciation in any year to the book value at the beginning of that year is constant throughout the life of the property, and it is designated by this variable k, which is now the rate of depreciation. And this method does not apply if the salvage value is 0, because k will be equal to 1, and our annual depreciation d sub 1 will be equal now to or C sub O, which is the original cost of the machine or equipment. And we have here in figure 1 the declining balance method flowchart for our topic today. So we have here from year 0 to 1, we have this annual depreciation d sub 1. So as for the year 1 and year 2, d sub 2, and so on and so forth until the useful life of the machine. So on top of this, we have now this original cost of the machine at year 0, C sub 1 for year 1 until the C sub L for after the useful life of the machine or equipment. So proceeding with our table 1, no, for constructing the declining balance method table for depreciation. So we have here on the first column the year from 1 to the useful life of the machine L. And on the second column here, we have the book value at the beginning of the year. It is denoted by CO for the first year. For the second year, CO times this quantity 1 minus K. For the third year, CO times 1 minus K squared until the useful life, which is CO times this 1 minus K raised now to the power of L minus 1. So as you can see, there is a trending here, no, for calculating the book value at the beginning of the year. So for year 1, actually this is just equal now to CO times the quantity 1 minus K raised now to the power of 0. So since any number or variable raised to the power of 0 is just equal to 1, so it is just put here as CO. But originally, this is CO times the quantity 1 minus K raised now to the power of 0. And for the year 2, CO times the quantity 1 minus K raised to the power of 1. Okay? So, the same for this year 3. CO times the quantity 1 minus k raised now to the squared. You just have to remember that the exponent of your 1 minus k is just the number of year minus 1. Okay? For year 1, we have 1 minus 1, so that's why 1 minus k raised to the power of 0. For the year 2, 1 minus k raised to the power of 2 minus 1, so it is 1. Okay? For year 3, 1 minus k raised to the power of 3 minus 1, that's why this is 2, and the same also for the other years. Okay? And then for the third column, we have the depreciation during the year. So our annual depreciation during the year 1, D1, small d1 is just equal now to K times this CO. And for the year 2, denoted by D sub 2 is equal now to K times the C1. Okay? So if you can observe, until the last annual depreciation DL is just equal now to K times this CL minus 1. So actually, you just need to multiply now after getting this annual depreciation for the first year of equal now to K times CO. For the second year, it's just you use this K, no? Just multiply this K with our C1 here during the first year. And for this D3, K times the C2 here for the second year. Okay? And do the same for all the other years now until the useful life of the machine. Okay? And for the fourth column, we have now the book value at the end of year. So we have now the C1, which is just equal now to CO minus D1. No? Actually, we just apply the general formula here, which our C sub n is just equal now to CO minus the capital D sub n, no? Considering the total depreciation at the age in year, but since we are considering yearly, so that is why this is just equal now to CO minus D sub 1, okay? Annual depreciation D sub 1. Alternatively, you can also use C1 is just equal now to CO times this quantity 1 minus K, and also for C2 equal now to CO times this 1 minus K squared, and do the same for the other years until the useful life of the machine, okay? So you can use this formula, no, in constructing and developing your declining balance method for depreciation. But we have now these basic formulas, no? These five formulas also to calculate those values here in the table. You can also use this one, formula number one. Small d sub n equals now to CO times the quantity 1 minus k raised to the power of n minus 1 times k in calculating the annual depreciation. And second, we have now this book value, C sub n equals now to C sub o times the quantity 1 minus k raised to the n. Or you can use the second formula of C sub n equal now to CO times this ratio, CL over CO raised now to the power of n over L. We have also now this third formula for our salvage value, CL. It's just equal now to our CO times the quantity 1 minus k raised now to the power of L. And fourth, we have now this rate of depreciation, K, equal now to 1 minus the quantity Cn over CO raised to the power of 1 minus 1 over n rather. Or you can use K equals to 1 minus this quantity Cl over CO raised to the power of 1 over L. And lastly, we have now this book value formula for formula number 5. Cn equals now to CO minus D sub n. Okay? So to better understand, no, on the application of the following formulas, so we will proceed to our sample problem number 1. So we have here a certain type of machine loses 10% of its value each year, and the machine cost 2,000 pesos originally, and make a schedule showing the yearly depreciation. Take note, referring now to this small d, the total depreciation, referring now to our capital D, and the book value, referring to our C sub n, at the end of each year for 5 years. So we can say that n is just equal now to 5 years, and our original cost CO is just equal now to 2,000 pesos. Okay, so as a solution for this, we have now the CO equals to 2,000 and n equals to 5 years. First, we are going to determine, no, this yearly depreciation denoted by this small d equal now to CO times the quantity 1 minus k raised to the n minus 1 times k for the first year. So we will use D1 for the first year here. So we have here this value of k, no, since we need to determine our k to get the value of our D1. So k is just 10%, which is referring now to this 10%, no, here in this problem. So therefore, our D1 is just equal now to 2,000 times this quantity 1 minus k, here our k is 0.1, raised now to the n minus 1. Our n is during the first year is 1, so that's why 1 minus 1 times this k of 0.1. So we can get the value of our D1 equal now to 200 pesos. Okay, so we are going to calculate now the total depreciation, but prior to this, we need to calculate first the book value, no, for the first year, referring now to this C sub 1. So by formula, our book value C sub n is equal now to CO times the quantity 1 minus k raised to the n. Since we are considering first year, so this will become C sub 1, okay? C sub 1 equals now to CO, which is 2,000 times 1 minus 0.1 raised to the n. Our n is 1 since we are considering first year. So we can get the value of our C1 equal now to 1,800 pesos. So actually, we can get, no, the value of our total depreciation since we already got this C1 and this small d1. So by the formula, Cn equals to CO minus dn. So we have now this C1 equals to CO minus d sub 1. Okay. So substituting those values, so C1 is 1,800 equal now to CO, which is 2,000 minus d1. So we can actually get our total depreciation, no, at the age 1 year. So we can get D1 equals now to 200 pesos. So after this, we are done with this yearly depreciation, with this total depreciation, and the book value. So we are going to put this one into the table, no? So we have here our table 1 for the depreciation schedule using this declining balance method. So we have here D1 of 200, referring to this one, your total depreciation, capital D sub 1, 200, referring to this one, and we have now this capital C sub 1 referring to this one, no, on this column. So you may wonder where we get this 2000 here. So as you can observe, no, in our previous slide, so actually this is referring now to this one in this table, no. Book value at the beginning of the year. You can use these formulas, no, in constructing your depreciation table. So this is just equal now to CO, okay? So for the second year, it's just equal now to CO times 1 minus K. So let us check now for this one. For the table, first, it is equal now to CO, which is 2000. And then for the second year, it is equal now to CO times the quantity 1 minus K. So actually, this is 2000 times the quantity 1 minus 0.1, or 2000 times 0.9. So you can check that one, no? This is actually equal now to 1800 when we multiply this 2000 times the quantity 1 minus 0.1. Okay, so the same also for the third year, fourth year, until the fifth year. You can use the formula in the table in getting these values here. Okay, so now we are going to proceed now to the calculation of this year 2. So first, we need to calculate the annual depreciation for the second year, which is D2 equals now to 2000 times the quantity 1 minus 0.1 raised now to this one. N is 2, so 2 minus 1 times this quantity 0.1. So we can get our value of D2, which is 180 here. Okay. So before getting the total depreciation, we need to calculate the book value C2 during the second year. So C2 is just equal now to 2000 times this quantity here, 1 minus 0.1 raised to the 2. So we can get the value of our C2 equals now to 1620 here. So after that one, we can calculate now the book, rather the total depreciation of the machine equipment during the year 2. So using this formula, Cn is equal now to C minus Dn. So since we are considering second year, so C2 equals to CO minus D2. So we can get actually the value of our D2 equals now to 380 here. So the same calculation is the same using procedure and formulas. You can calculate year 3, year 4 until the year 5. So you can check, no, and you can do this in checking all these values here until the useful life, no, of 5 years. So that would be it, no, for the sample problem number 1 using the declining balance method. Okay, so I hope this is already clear, no, to everyone on how to use this declining balance method in constructing a depreciation table using this method. Okay, so we proceed now to our next topic, which is the double declining balance method. So one important note here is this method is very similar to the declining balance method, except that your K, which is the rate of depreciation, is replaced by this 2 over L. So you can still use the same formulas, no, in the declining balance method, but you are going to replace the K value there by this 2 over L. So more or less, it's just easy to remember, no? As long as you are familiar with the formula of the declining balance method, and when you are considering double declining, so just replace the K value there equals now to this 2 over L. Okay? So proceeding with our sample problem number 2 for this double declining balance method, we are going to determine the rate of depreciation, referring now to this K, the total depreciation, referring now to the capital D sub N, up to the end of the 8 years. So actually this 8 is just our N. And the book value at the end of 8 years, so we are going to determine the CN. So first, the K. Second is capital D sub N, the total depreciation. And the third is the book value C sub N. For an asset that costs 15,000 pesos and has an estimated scrap value of 2,000 pesos, so actually our CO is just equal now to this 15,000 pesos, and our scrap value or the trade-in value is just 2,000 pesos, which is our CL. Okay? At the end of 10 years, meaning this 10 years is just our useful life L. So you just have to remember that the N, no? The N is always less than your L. Okay? So remember that one. N years is just less than, is always less than the L years. Okay? So our N here is 8 and our L is just 10 years. Okay? So now these are the given parameters. N is 8 years, L is 10 years. CO is the original cost, which is 15,000 here. And the CL is the scrap value of 2,000 pesos here. Okay? So first we are going to use the declining balance method, and afterwards we are going to use the double declining balance method. Okay? So first we have now this declining balance method and calculate the rate of depreciation based on the problem. So using equation 4, no? Since we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 there. So using equation 4, we have now this K equal now to 1 minus the quantity CL over CO raised to the power of 1 over L. So our K is then equal now to CL is given, our CO is given, 1 over L, the L is given, so actually we can get the value of our K here. So substituting these values here, so we can get the value of our K, which is equal now to 18.25% or 0.1825 in decimal. So we are done with this rate of depreciation. So for our total depreciation, so before we arrive to this capital D sub N, we need to determine first the annual depreciation, no? Using the equation 1. So using equation 1, our small d sub n is just equal now to CO times the quantity 1 minus k raised to the n minus 1 times k. So all these values here, CO, k, n, are given. So we can just substitute all these numerical values here and we can get the value of our D, no? In which in this case, the problem said that we're going to determine the book value at the end of 8 years. So same also for our annual depreciation. No? We are still considering n equals now to 8. So that's why we are using d sub 8. So substituting the 8 here, 8 minus 1 here, as our n equal now to 8. So 8 minus 1 times 0.1825. So we can get the value of our annual depreciation at the age 8 years equal now to 667.99 pesos. So after this one, we can calculate now the total depreciation, the capital D sub n, which is our second unknown here, no? So proceeding, using equation 5, so our Cn is just equal now to Co minus Dn. So we can get now the value of our Cn using equation 2 by this formula, no? Cn equals now to Co times the quantity 1 minus k raised now to the n. So C is given, K is given, and n is given. So we can get the value of our n, and then afterwards we can calculate the total depreciation, no? At the age 8 years. So referring now to this d sub n, or equal now to d sub 8. So we have now this value of C8 equal now to CO, which is 15,000. Times the quantity 1 minus K. Our K is 0.125. Our N is 8. So we can get the C8 equals now to 2,992 pesos. So now we can calculate the value of our D8 here using this equation 5. So we have here 2,992, referring now to our C8 here, equal now to CO, which is 15,000 minus DN. Our DN here is our D8, so we can get the value of our D8 is equal now to 12,008 pesos. So we are done with the total depreciation, and the last one is the book value. Okay, but the book value is, we already have now this C8 here. So I think we are done with the rate of depreciation, with the total depreciation, which is our D8, and our book value, which is our C8. So we are done with the rate of depreciation, total depreciation, and the book value using the declining balance method. So now we are going to proceed to the double declining balance method. So note, replace K is just equal now to 2 over L in using this double declining balance method. So here K is just equal now to 2 over L. So our L is 10. So our K is just equal now to 2 over 10. So K is therefore equal now to 0.2 or 20%. So first we are going now to determine the total depreciation, since we already have now this rate of depreciation K equal now to 20%. But prior to that, we have now this formula of Cn is equal now to Co times the quantity 1 minus K raised to the N. And then CO is given, the K is already calculated here as 20%, and N is given, which is 8. So we can get now the value of our C8 is equal now to 15,000 times 1 minus 0.2 raised now to the power of 8. So we have now this C8 equal now to 2,517 pesos. So we have already the book value, the rate of depreciation, but we only lack now the total depreciation. So using this formula for calculating the total depreciation, Cn is equal now to Co minus Dn. So C8 is just equal now to Co minus D8. And then we already calculated the C8 and we already have the CO, so we can have this D8, which is just equal now to 12,483 pesos. Okay, so this is how to calculate the rate of depreciation, the total depreciation, even the annual depreciation, and the book value of any machine or equipment using the double declining balance method. So you just have to remember that the double declining balance method is very coherent to this declining balance method. You're just going to use the formula in the declining balance method, those five formulas, or even those formulas in the table. And then afterwards, when you are going to use that one in the double declining method, you're just going to replace the value of your K, which is equal now then to 2 over L in the double declining balance method. So I think that would be it for this lecture today for our two depreciation methods, the declining balance method, and the second one is the double declining balance method. So I hope you understand it fully now, since we already discussed the straight line method as our first depreciation method. The second one is the sinking fund method, and the third and the fourth one are the declining balance method and the double declining balance method. So in our next lecture is we are going to use the sum of the years digit depreciation method. Okay, so thank you very much for listening and for watching this lecture video of mine, and I hope this will help you a lot uh, in your quest for excellency in this subject. And thank you very much again, and these are my references of Santa Maria Polito and Mandawi Joel and Roger Caputi. And again, have a great day ahead of us, and thank you very much for watching. So God bless and keep safe.